political power. That's how Democrats passed the Affordable Care Act. But Obamacare also fueled a Tea Party backlash that gave Republicans control of the House of Representatives. Did that toehold also give conservatives the leverage to kill the law? Two new senators elected with strong Tea Party support thought so. Ted Cruz of Texas and Utah's Mike Lee. September 10th, Washington, D.C.
Only you can win this fight.
The Tea Party is tired of losing. Republican successes, they think, have succeeded only in delaying and minimizing the inevitable swelling of Washington's power. They want to begin to win. And that frustration points you in the direction of an urgent strategy and set of tactics.
If everyone who purports to be against Obamacare agrees to do this, we can defund it. We can and we must, and together we will.
Right after the rally, I sat down with Cruz and Lee. You've been talking about this as the last chance to get rid of Obamacare. Do you believe that?
What I've described it as is the last chance before Obamacare kicks in on January 1st. And that's significant because we know that when a major entitlement program kicks in this country, it's really hard to get rid of it.
We've got 20 days between now and September 30th.
Congress is given the power of the purse, but it's a meaningless power. If you don't say to the executive branch, we are going to start, as Ted Cruz might say, defunding things. If you're not willing to use the powers that the framers gave you to rein in executive excess, you are inviting more executive excess and the raw wielding of power.
Senator Cruz may be the most visible leader of the defund effort, but Tom Graves of Georgia is the congressman who sponsored the bill in the House that would fund the government only if Obamacare was zeroed out. He told us of his impassioned plea to get House Republicans behind it.
I shared my heart. I said, I cannot look my constituents in the eyes and tell them that I did all I could do for them if we don't do everything right now. As I concluded my remarks, there was applause throughout the conference.
It was the first bill that Graves had ever written. It passed, setting up a shutdown showdown with the Democratic-controlled Senate.
I think it showed us exactly how far the Tea Party was willing to go, which was not completely clear before that. I feel like it's a game changer.
I rise today in opposition to Obamacare.
Vowing to use every procedural measure to fight on in the Senate, Cruz takes the floor on September 24th at 2:41 p.m.
I intend to speak in support of defunding Obamacare until I am no longer able to stand. The whole debate we're having here today is not over strategy. Everyone in America understands that Obamacare is destroying jobs.
He speaks for 21 hours, 19 minutes.
The hour of noon having arrived pursuant to the order of
and then, as expected, the Senate strips out the defund language.
Any bill that defunds Obamacare is dead. Dead.
In that fight, if everything went your way, the president would have vetoed that thing to defund, and you would have been back to...
Well, not necessarily. Listen, if you made the case to the American people that Obamacare wasn't working, that I think the political pressure on the president would have been considerable. Now, would he have somehow needed some sort of face-saving retreat about, well, this is not repealing it, it's a delay till we get our act together? Sure, but I think that could potentially have been achievable if we had been united.
In fact, a Fox News poll taken at the time found a sizable minority of Americans actually did want to defund the law, and a majority liked the idea of delaying it. That's what the House tried next, passing a bill funding the government, but delaying Obamacare 1 year.
We're not going to bow to Tea Party anarchists.
To Senate Democrats, delay was as much a non-starter as defund.
Obamacare is the law of the land and will remain the law of the land, and as long as I'm Senate Majority Leader.
The partial government shutdown arrived.
The Affordable Care Act is moving forward. That funding is already in place. You can't shut it down. Starting tomorrow, tens of millions of Americans will be able to visit healthcare.gov to shop for affordable health care coverage.
October 1st, the big moment. But healthcare.gov crashes upon launch.
Now, like every new law, every new product rollout, there are going to be some glitches that we will fix.
Were you surprised that this rollout had gone so poorly?
Yes.
Really surprised?
Yeah. Shocked. The team that was working on this let the American people down and let the president down.
If the website was a debacle for Democrats, the shutdown was one for Republicans, says GOP Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin.
I wish we would have pursued delay. I think we'd be looking like political geniuses had we demanded delay.
I mean, Senator Cruz would say, hey, listen, they got to delay very quickly. Once the House sent over its legislation, the next negotiating ploy, once Senator Reid said no, was to say, okay, what about a one-year delay?
Well, I think the original demand was viewed by the American public as unreasonable. And as a result, it kind of armed Harry Reid and President Obama to dig in their heels and continue to point to Republicans as just being utterly unreasonable, no matter what we propose later on.
But George Will says Democrats didn't seem particularly reasonable either.
The president followed his sequester folly. The sky is falling, the earth's coming to an end, with, oh my goodness, government shut down. We have to first build a fence around an open-air World War II memorial so we can say we've closed it. And he looked like a foolish and vindictive man.
Soon, another deadline approached. The debt ceiling, again. That turned out to be one showdown too many for congressional Republicans who were being blamed most by an angry public for shutting down the government.
You had leadership in both parties come together and say, let's jack up the debt ceiling, let's keep spending, let's keep borrowing money, and let's not provide meaningful relief to Obamacare.
Why didn't you try to block the final deal?
I could have delayed it a day or two. That would have had no impact on the outcome. I'm interested in fighting fights where you can make a meaningful difference for the American people.
The real problem with what Mr. Cruz did was he turned to decent, devoted, conservative Americans and said, I got a shortcut. There aren't any shortcuts. It was, to me, an act of supreme irresponsibility to arouse the Republican base, good, hardworking, devoted people, ardent to have limited government, but to arouse them for a crusade that he had to know he couldn't win.
George Will, who I have great respect for, is wrong. I think a political movement has to be a movement. It can't sit on its hands. It has to stand for things in order to attract political support. And I think that as Obamacare rolls out, what they're going to remember is that Cruz was right and that the people who didn't want to fight this thing were wrong.
Americans were as split as McCarthy and Will over the defund fight, according to a Fox News poll taken at the time. 46% saw it as a waste of time. Exactly the same number saw it as an important effort. That included 59% of Republicans and 74% of Tea Partiers.
God bless Texas!
So it's not so surprising Senator Cruz returned to a hero's welcome back home. By November, with the government shutdown in the rearview mirror and the troubled Obamacare rollout front and center, Republicans erased an 8-point Democratic lead in the generic congressional ballot. The GOP was now up by 3. Meanwhile, conservative efforts to kill the law continued, with skirmishes in venues you wouldn't expect.